couple of questions. I think one was around last mile type projects, so like Web3 social media. So I think if you mean like a social media dApp being built on a particular protocol, like let's say you were building, you know, a decentralized, I don't know, Instagram on Filecoin. Yeah, absolutely, for sure. And as a matter of fact, I would say that, you know, if it's something like social media, that, you know, something that's not DeFi, then probably would most likely, you know, I would say be probably more appropriate to go on the Filecoin track. And then you had a question around the geographic breakdown of applicants and age range. Like I don't have the specific numbers, but we do take projects, and we have accelerated projects globally. So, you know, from China, India, quite a few in the US, we also had a couple from Africa as well. So it's pretty global, and we don't consider geography as a criteria. Age range, I don't know. Most people in crypto are fairly young, so you can tell by my white hair that I'm a bit of an outlier. But yeah, I don't know the age range, but yeah, I mean, yeah, like I said, a lot of young people, but I've also seen a few people who, a bit like me, made kind of a mid-career change into crypto, and someone to build a project. So yeah, also not a qualifying criteria. Pranav, do you want to answer the next one? How do you measure success of your projects?
So I'll just give you a quick thing. So I don't think we did much of an age range thing last time, but I do remember that a lot of the projects, I think we had about 20 odd countries across multiple continents that had applied. And we did that. We did a very quick back of the envelope calculation for that. Sorry, what was the question you wanted me to answer?
So Alex had a question on how do you measure success of your projects?
I'm just speaking to somebody on personal chat to answer a few questions. Let me just go back to the scene. Oh, okay. How do you? I think Emerson already went through that. So what we're kind of looking for is a very holistic application which spans a few sort of verticals. We are looking for, you know, I guess a strong team, you know, a team that does have some experience prior to this. We're looking for, you know, what kind of problem that you guys are solving and how your solution is, you know, well positioned to actually solve that problem. You know, what's the obviously then the immediate following question is what's the actual size of the problem you're trying to solve, and that gives us an idea of what kind of market you're looking at. We're also looking at the competition and seeing where you guys are actually fitting in. Yeah, that's I think a few of the key criteria that we're looking for. Yeah.
Okay, I can take the next one from Cedric. So he has two questions. So the first one is, what is the biggest shortfall for product market fit for people coming into the program? I think for this one, I mean, it's a little bit hard to give a comprehensive answer, but maybe I can just give some examples, right? I think when it comes to product market fit, like, you know, the real question is, are you addressing, you know, are you addressing a real problem that we see today, or are you building something that is you know, in some of the trends that we're seeing going into the future. And I'll give you a couple of examples. And again, this is not comprehensive at all, right? But so for example, like if you're going for the DeFi track, you know, are you building, you know, some protocol around like structured products, derivatives, options, you know, which is an area that we're seeing as a new trend. And it's also an area that we see where, you know, only now are some protocols building that. So if it's something there, be like, great. You know, on the flip side, if you're building something that feels like, well, you know, this kind of already exists in some way, you know, shape or form, or maybe there's a question around, you know, like let's say if you're the file contract, for example, like, you know, why Filecoin, is it really obvious or not, right? So these would be some examples, but of course it'll really depend, you know, on a project by project basis. Quite a few others coming in. There's another question from Cedric. I don't know, maybe Emerson, do you want to answer that one? So it's basically, you know, the composition of the core teams.
Yeah, it's really diverse. Like any team in crypto, right? And they like for example, in one of our pioneer cohort, Asia DeFi Network, Francis was from a very traditional investment banking background. There's also like Bitcoasting, for instance, is in our portfolio, which is really a strong developer's background, very strongly technical. So yeah, it's really diverse across the teams that we welcome in our program. And yeah, we're open to anyone really, as long as you have shown strong executional ability.
Yeah. Then I think Tripati had a question around what are the terms for the 80K investment. So I think Pranav explained it really is on a case-to-case basis, and it's usually negotiable. So we'll discuss individually with each projects. And then Stacy has two questions. One is, are there any specific blockchains or I guess platforms that are getting more funding, and do we link with technical founders? So I think in blockchains, so I wouldn't say whether they're getting more funding or not. I would say that obviously for the Filecoin track, you should be building on Filecoin. And then for the DeFi track, we're quite platform agnostic on that. So it's not just building on Ethereum. You can be building on different platforms. And actually, you can see even from our own portfolio, like, we have the ones building on Ethereum and Polygon, like Balancer. We have Acala that's building on Polkadot. Tranches has been built in BSC. So again, pretty platform agnostic. And then on the link with technical founders, yes. So that's one of the 6 core elements of the program, that we do rope in our technical founders to provide technical mentorship. And so we have, people from protocol labs who can do that, and then people from our Asia DeFi Network for some of the sort of big DeFi protocols that can also do that for you. Pranav, do you want to take the next one?
Yeah. So after the demo day, there'll be about a few weeks of continued support, where we'll kind of ensure that if you guys are getting if you guys are sort of raising around, we'll kind of support you through that. If you guys are at one particular milestone and you want to get there will be a certain amount of support. It will be a little more towards the waning side after a few weeks. But I think on the fundraising side, there's going to be about 4 weeks of continued support post the demo day.
Maybe while we wait for a few more questions, one thing I wanted to go back to was an earlier question around whether the project needs to be in Asia, and just to explain that a little bit more. So we're all based in Southeast Asia. So Pranav and I are in Singapore, Emerson is in Malaysia. And so our team is mostly in Southeast Asia as well as China. But it is a global accelerator. And I think, like we mentioned earlier, we have had teams from all over the world. Being geographically spread out and obviously with Zoom, it's never really an issue, right? So the level of support, the level of engagement that you get doesn't matter whether you're in Southeast Asia or Europe, the US, Africa, Latin America. It really doesn't matter. The level of engagement is the same. Ultimately, we are vested in your success. So it's in our interest to make sure that you're successful. Maybe Pranav can. Oh, there we go. Yeah. Okay. Good. Yeah. So he's sort of best place to answer that question. Yeah. And I think
also more on the conservative side, because I think it's going to be depends on the first few weeks, might be a little bit more. It's a connection to be one that helped your project. So I'm just putting a ballpark figure of about 2 to 3 hours a week.
Yeah, and a lot of it, like Pranav said, will really depend on a project by project. At what stage you are. With some of the early stage ones, we might spend a bit more time upfront to maybe help to craft, your product strategy and design, and then the ones that are a little bit further down, maybe we'll be discussing, a few things like around economics or even governance. And so again, so there'll be like a standard fortnightly catch up. But then in between, there'll be, us introducing you to, mentors or investors, or us within the team helping you with a particular question. And then to the next question from Cedric. So how many team members participate? So I'm assuming you mean from the project. So it's usually one or two. From what we've seen, it's typically like the co-founders or, you know, the CEO or the CTO or so, or the COO. I mean, it depends on how you're structured, but it's usually 1 to 2 of the team members. And yeah, of course, I mean, it really is up to the project, but it's also important that you know, the co-founders are fairly engaged.
Yeah, and we would also recommend both the CEO and the CTO to be involved at some particular time, because we have things like the CTO brown bags when everyone sort of comes together and has a more technical conversation, and we also have like conversations which will be more routed towards the CEO. So it's good to have like sort of both involved. Projects usually bootstrapped at this point. I think it's very diverse. Also had guys who've been who had nothing before. So we try to keep the cohort as diverse as possible. So there's also some intra-learning that takes place as well. So we're looking to take a max of about 10 projects in the DeFi track, and we have kept 5 for Filecoin. We don't want to take like more than 15. That's our upper cap. How many make to end? I think that's it's a question that depends on the batch. Like, for example, I just give you a number for the last batch. We took about 10 or 11 projects, and we had about 160 applications.
Yeah, everyone.
Oh, everybody makes it to the end of the
everybody should make it to the end of mentioned. You know, ultimately, you know, we are vested in your success, right? So we will help you be successful. And if it means that we need to get a little bit more hands-on with helping you on a particular topic, then we'll do that. But yeah, everybody gets to the end.
What's the best way to prepare for like the application and set that up? Like, do you guys have any recommendations for that, with the deadline being like a week away?
So what I would recommend is, I think you just go through the application and see what kind of questions there are. In my opinion, they're very generic questions that I think most of would be very easy for you guys to answer. At the same time, if there are any sort of questions that you guys have, I have a sort of 1 to 2 hours a day set aside in my Calendly just to take some 15-minute calls from anybody who has questions. So I'll just send that link to you. Let me find it.
So what are like the deliverables like that people usually attach with their applications? Is it like a pitch deck, a white paper? Meet the team is kind of what I'm getting a better sense of, and like trying to see like what is best for those.
Yeah, so I think in terms of attachment, there would be a pitch deck or a white paper, whichever one you have, depending on the stage that you guys are as well. The team there would be a separate question for the team as well. So I guess you can just sort of put the team members and just give some quick sort of explanation of what these guys are doing and what your background looks like, etc. I would recommend you to go through the application. I think it's very straightforward. It's not like there aren't any questions that would be hard to answer. Right.
Any other questions? I know we're a little bit over time, but if anybody has any other questions, happy to continue to answer them.
Like throughout the program, will there be kind of any updates for like people who aren't in the program, whether it's like materials that are produced during or anything like that? Or is it like strictly like kind of internal to those who are accepted in the program?
Does anybody want to take that question? Or can I?
Sorry, can you say it one more time?
Like is the materials that you're making, whether it's like workshops or kind of mentorship events, like is anything kind of made available to the public for those who aren't like accepted in the program, or any of like the resources produced for LongHash?
Yeah, it does become available usually after the program. So if you go to any of our channels like YouTube or our podcast channel, etc. So you usually make some of the workshops or the fireside chats available. Although we typically do it either after the program, or we do it maybe like a couple of weeks after the fact, because I mean ultimately it is more targeted to the projects that are in the program. But yeah, eventually we do make it all public.
Usually, so the information does become public after a particular amount of time. But what the participants actually get is the ability to ask questions. And usually these guys are mentors who also offer mentor hours later. So you can have like a one-to-one time with them, personalized one-to-one sort of feedback session sometime in the future. I guess that's for participants only, of course.
I'm just going to share the application link.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, so I just shared the application link on the chat. So we're still running applications for about another week and a half, or roughly 10 days. So applications close on the 9th of August. So yeah, if you're building something on DeFi or on Filecoin, and we should also clarify that while the focus is for the DeFi track on DeFi and Filecoin is for people building on Filecoin, if you're building something around NFTs, for example, we're also very interested. Even if you're building something that is not that, but it could be maybe like infra or so, you should still apply, because while our focus as a fund and as an accelerator is primarily on DeFi and NFTs, we definitely are keen to see some of the other applications being built that could be quite interesting and that are following some of the recent trends. So definitely apply.
What type of NFT project would you look at, like collateralizing NFTs, or just simply like minting it, or like a marketplace? Like what in terms of that, like what's the ideal kind of use case?
So it's quite broad. I mean, so if you look back at the previous accelerator, we had quite a few NFT platforms. I mean, a lot of it was around minting in different ways or forms. And then there was actually one which was actually, around using it for authenticity of like photos, which came with like a photo taking app and then a platform for authenticity and so on. But I would not restrict it to any particular use case, right? So, because I think when we look at NFTs, both, there's a lot of like hype and funding going into platforms, but there's a lot of other use cases. And I think it's also a big area of interest. And so, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't restrict. I wouldn't want to restrict. What type of project. So just definitely apply. We've covered, all the questions and everything that needs to be said about the LongHash and the LongHashX program. And yeah, I think the only thing left to say is that we're looking forward to review your applications.